The BBC has recently had a problem with wage gaps, and in this article, BBC Women, Their Pay Gap Stories, it is shown that maybe there are a few problems in the BBC. 14 women have given written testimonies based on their experiences of pay negotiations at the BBC. One said her line manager told her the BBC doesn't do equal pay. The evidence was submitted ahead of Wednesday's Parliamentary Select Committee hearing about the gender pay gap at the BBC. There, the Digital, Cultural, Media and Sport (DCMS) committee heard from the BBC's Director General Tony Hall. Carrie Gracie, who recently resigned at the BBC's China editor over pay disparity, also appeared. Most women who gave written evidence via the BBC Women Group did not wish to give their names out for concern of their career at the corporation, which is fair enough. Now, I'm going to go through some of these stories myself because, honestly, some of the stories kind of just make the argument against the wage gap just from the way the women say they reacted. But to be honest, some of these stories, such as this national radio presenter one where she has 20 years experience and was paid 25% less compared to her male colleagues, and then is told the BBC doesn't do equal pay and that she was being aggressive when she was trying to negotiate it, maybe in certain anecdotal ways there is a bit of gender discrimination, but again, this is one story out of 14 that, I mean, the other 14 aren't really that convincing, to be honest. And to be honest, who's to say she isn't lying? I'm not saying she is, but I'm just saying she could be. But to be honest, I don't think she is. But that being said, there are stories like this one. National broadcaster. Since July, I've been offered a 65% pay rise whilst also being told that the BBC is satisfied there is no issue with equal pay in my case. In pay terms, this offer will bring me in line with the lowest paid of the presenters who work on the same programme as I do. This is despite my longer service on that programme. Well, you haven't said that you asked for more, which if you've worked longer on that programme, you could probably get them to excuse to pay you more since you've worked longer on it. But I have to assume you didn't ask for it, because if you asked for it, you would have mentioned it. But you didn't, so I'm assuming you didn't. And then in contractual terms, I am still disadvantaged as, unlike fellow presenters, I am not on full staff, so I've not benefited from pension rights accrued over many years. Well, how's that a gender problem? Your contract isn't full. How can you say you're disadvantaged unfairly? I assume you're saying it's unfairly because the whole point of these stories is that how you are being treated unfairly. That's not unfair. You signed that contract. So this is a bit of a no-brainer. She just could have asked for more money, it seems, and she didn't. So this disproves the pay gap a bit, in my opinion. There is also this story of UK-based on-air editor. In 2017, I discovered one of the male UK-based editors reporting for the same flagship programmes is paid between 50% and 100% more than me, I assume she means. Since then, it has become apparent other male on-air editors making equivalent news pieces for the same news programmes are also paid significantly more. The BBC has refused to accept there is an equal pay issue, but offered me an on-the-spot 10% increase. I have not accepted, as it does not resolve the wider issue around pay inequality. So, two things. Firstly, those other male editors, right, just because they're working on the same flagship programmes as you, doesn't mean they're not doing more than that at the BBC to not deserve to be paid more. So, you might just be doing this on-air editing. They might be doing this on-air editing, going to present other programmes in other departments of the BBC, editing other shows, I don't know. You've left that out. If you said they do nothing else but this and are paid more for this identical job, I'd believe you, but you've left too much out there, in my opinion. And then this second bit, you refuse to take a pay increase? How do I know you haven't done that before? How do I know you haven't been given a 50% to 100% increase to your salary before and refused to accept it? Because I don't even know why you didn't take that. It's like, oh, it doesn't fix the issue. What do you mean it doesn't help fix the issue? Are you like, they're trying to close the gap for you and you refuse to take it? Like, I don't understand why you do that. You can't. I don't think you can complain after you refuse to take a pay increase that would close the pay gap a bit. That just doesn't make any sense. This one got me good, to be honest. I quite like this one. The last one I'll go through is this sport editor. I lead a sports team in a big city with Premier League teams in our patch. There are few women in equivalent jobs, none in a big city. I believe I have been paid less than my male counterparts across the UK for most of the time I've been doing this job. 4 men doing the same job have confirmed their salaries higher by up to £10,000. I have no confidence in the BBC review process. I tried asking for equal pay in 2007 and recently heard it is still under review. Well, the reason they're probably paid up to £10,000 more than you is because maybe those editors are working in London, where there are lots of Premier League teams that they have to work over, and you could be in a big city, quotation marks, maybe such as Leicester, where there is Leicester. Oh, what are the other? I don't think there are any other teams in Leicester that are in football. Anyway, I know if we have Leicester Tigers, who are pretty big. I assume you don't just work on football. So, you being a sports editor in a smaller city doesn't mean you should earn the same as a sports editor in a bigger city such as London. But I don't know. You might be working in London. They might be working in Leicester. But from what you're saying about pay, I don't believe that's true. So this is the main problem with these. They don't give you enough detail. You have to make a lot of assumptions that one, they're telling the truth, and two, they're saying as much as is absolutely necessary, really, to make people who are sympathetic to their cause of equal pay in big quotation marks. Like, someone hears things like this, they're like, oh, why do the men deserve more? Well, there could be many reasons, but they're leaving out a lot of detail, so you don't really know if it's deserved or not. So on the 30th of January, there was a review of all the on-air stars at the BBC, and it found out that there was absolutely no gender discrimination in pay, and that's obviously pissed a lot of people off, by which I mean women. So this article in The Guardian, same old fudge, BBC women hit out at equal pay review. Obviously that was going to be their response to this. As word trickled through the BBC that a review of on-air pay commissioned by the corporation had found no evidence of gender bias on Tuesday morning, the WhatsApp groups and email threads of BBC Women began to vibrate with increasing urgency. Well, of course, it's just completely ruined their entire narrative. One on-air insider said, BBC Women have zero faith in the report. That's certainly the general mood within the sisterhood this morning. Well, of course you're not happy with it. It's not telling you what you want to hear. It's telling you reality, the opposite of what you want to hear. Oh, the ridiculous, I tell you. In a statement, the group criticised the decision to only look at on-air news employees, which excluded many high earners, and stressed the need for swift and meaningful change for women in all roles. Well, of course it's going to exclude high earners. It's going to be pretty difficult to compare high earners because their jobs are so radically different. Like, Chris Evans is the highest earner at like 2 million. That's because he presents about 5 breakfast shows a week and does the most popular show on the BBC, which is Top Gear, even though it's crap. And then you've got others who are just they're more paid for their names more than anything, to be honest. So how are you going to compare them? And you only want that because it will prove your point, you think. But I don't even think it will do that because, again, you're comparing people's names. Like, how can you possibly compare that? It's ridiculous. Others went further, arguing that PricewaterhouseCoopers' controversial decision to identify 98 men and 90 women who could get a pay rise would only entrench inequality. So in their review, they found out that men were more affected by gender discrimination than women. Oh, that is priceless. That's actually made my day. That's amazing. It seems like most of this article is just basically The Guardian talking to women and women saying, oh my god, this isn't fair, this isn't what I expected, how can the report say this, etc, etc. But even then, when they want action done, such as proposed £320,000 cap on news presenters' salaries, they're making John Humphreys take a pay cut. They're just dismissive diversionary tactics. So even when the BBC are trying their best to appease you, you're still not having it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. This is what I mean. It's like the story in the BBC where she's like, "Oh, I never took a pay rise because it's not answering, it's not addressing the problem." It's like, how is it not addressing the problem? Are you? Oh my god, nothing's gonna get done because when they try and do something, they don't take it. It's really weird. And then some of the women talk like it's some type of war. Like this BBC woman member said, "What's been brilliant over the past year or so is that, frankly, social media has allowed us to wage a collective battle, which, tactically speaking, would have been extraordinarily difficult in the past," she said. They're talking like it's a war. Well, if this is a war, like, you're the enemy in this case of your own corporation. What you're basically doing here is shitting where you eat by not accepting what the reviewers told you, which is that maybe there isn't actually gender discrimination. Maybe the men are just working harder, but you can't accept that because you're all cultural Marxists. It's ridiculous. The rest of this article is literally just women at the BBC complaining. I can't really be bothered going through them because I don't say anything interesting. So moving on. BBC pay gap. Hundreds of women in line for rises as top-earning men accept cuts. So this article it's another one that's basically just saying most of the men are taking pay cuts, but the important part is the start. The BBC has identified 188 roles requiring upward pay adjustments, of which 98% are male and 90 are female. I didn't mean percent there, sorry. But the women's pay rises will be greater, the corporation said. This will disproportionately improve pay for women, as it is more common to find women in roles at the lower end of the current pay ranges, which is fair enough. These proposals are subject to consultation, but we think they will affect just under 200 people and should reduce the gender pay gap, the BBC said in its written response to the report. So they are closing the gender pay gap, but obviously, as the women have all said, they don't accept this, and the rest of this article just goes on about the pay cuts that the big names are taking, which I personally don't think is fair, but the feminists still aren't accepting it, and it's really annoying. Finally, we have this article. Carrie Gracie, BBC bosses treating women who speak out over pay as the enemy. Carrie Gracie hit out at BBC bosses for treating women who speak out over pay as the enemy, as she raised doubts the corporation can be trusted to report on the gender pay. Gracie, who resigned from her post as China editor in A Row Over Pay, told MPs on the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee that a toxic work atmosphere existed as the credibility of management broke down. Now, maybe, Gracie, maybe you won't be called or treated as the enemy if you didn't act like this was a war and you weren't acting like you had to conquer the BBC to have your demands of full gender equality of outcome established. It's ridiculous. Calling you an enemy is probably quite accurate. I think it goes too far to be saying you're treated as an enemy. I don't think you're being treated as an enemy, but you are certainly trying to act like an enemy. Anyway, that's all I had for this topic. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.